Welcome to a flip through of the new Peter Pig rules called Western. Battles in the Old West, 1830-85 by the RFCM team, 2018. The book has got a length of 117 pages. A lot of that's all the things surrounding the game, not just the gameplay itself. It's printed in black and white, there it is. It's bound, spring bound to lay flat. You can lay the rules flat, you can flip through it. The front cover is glossy, inside the front cover is the battle sheet. This is black and white, you can download this from the Peter Pig website free of charge. This is your organisation for your game. So you write down anything you need to write down on this battle sheet. You could just write it on a scrap piece of paper, but there's a battle sheet. Most people these days would download them from the internet, fill them in, and throw them away after a game. The other end of the rules is the play sheet. It's a two-sided play sheet. Also, there's an additional play sheet inside, which are a pair of play sheets. And that's all you need to play the game. It's a two-sided play sheet. This is also available free of charge on Peter Pig's site, and it's black and white once again. You can print off a load if you want it. That's the play sheet. Let's have a quick flip through the rule book itself. Now, there's the index to all the parts to it. Some of the sections are important, some less so. But it's a complete set of rules. You don't need any other books to go with it. Now, first of all, a little bit of background to what Western does as a game, how it works, why it works, and the various items you need to consider whilst playing the game. A little bit of scale. There's a ground scale to this. Each square in the game is about 60 metres. Notes about gameplay. Principal weapons. Because it's a battle set and not a skirmish set, weapons are divided into short shooters, long shooters, bows, and a couple of other odds and ends. It doesn't cover all the individual weapons. However, for interest and background, some of the principal weapons of the period are listed with a little bit of detail about them, like the Colt Walker, 1847, it's got shotguns down there, turning over, a little bit of work on Spencer carbines, a general idea. Dictionary for the game, what specific words mean. There aren't really any three-letter acronyms in the game, so it's mostly just words that you need. Bases. The bases aren't important, but it makes your soldiers look nice. But you could use any basing system you like because it's a grid-based game. You play in the squares. A few requirements for the game, no problem at all. Thoughts about the grid size you might use. 50mm use a 6-inch grid size. But if you use bigger figures, you might use an 8-inch grid size or a 10-inch grid size. The grid size is up to you. But a 6-inch grid size gives a 5x3 table. A long list of how the game is set up with every single detail there. It looks a bit laborious, but that's every single detail. Building a force for Western. Well, there's a few pictures here about forces for Western. There's a point system there. About the commander, you have one figure which represents yourself, who's the commander. Leaders, each group, not units but groups, each group has a leader. He has some effect on the game. But it's not a skirmish, so each leader doesn't have lots and lots of individual characteristics. There's pictures of groups, stuff like that. Now here's the forces. There's Plains Indians, Apaches, Force C is gunmen, Mexicans, Force E is regular army, either foot or mounted, Force F, posse and lawmen, Force G is cattlemen, Force H is workers, Force J is townsfolk, K is settlers, and there's the forces done. Now, here's some overall narrative for the games. What this book does, what these rules done, they help you generate scenarios. You don't just turn up some, make something up. It generates a scenario that's fair to everybody. The first few scenarios is the aggression level. Each force has a set of applicable aggression levels. For example, the settlers aren't particularly aggressive on the levels. The Indians get some quite aggressive levels. The posse don't get any safe defensive type levels. They're mainly aggressive levels, and that's how the forces work. Now, when you play a game, the aggression level comes into it, but there are other aspects too, and that's how the scenario is generated. There's also a thing called liabilities. If you want your defender, you could have one liability or two liabilities or no liabilities. A liability might be something valuable. Here we've got a mule train, some civilians, various other bits and pieces. And that counter can work towards your own victory points, or if the opponent gets it, it helps their victory points. Moving on. Scenery. Scenery pieces are templated in the main. So you can have building templates, camps, woods, very rough hills, as in rocky hills, rough hills, gentle hills, dead ground, still water, long grass or crops, and roads and railways. Is some instruction on how to set the scenery up, so it's nice for people. How to deploy the forces. Deploying forces is quite interesting. The defenders tend to be within the table, and the attackers appear at the edges of the table. Not all along one edge. It's not a traditional battle. It's a little bit randomised. The on-table sequence. Morale. Morale's unusual in Western. All morale does, if you're bad at morale, it decreases what you can do. When under pressure, men will do a bit less, be a bit more cautious. So if you had a bad morale result, your men will just do less. They can't withdraw to a front line, off table, stuff like that. Now, mounting, dismounting, as an action point system. How to move. You move by the square, from square to square. Shooting, that's very important there. There's how the shooting works, nice and straightforward. Opportunity shooting and return shooting. So if someone shoots at you, you can shoot back, if they're in range. Beaten down, it's a bit like being pinned down sort of thing. Fights. Now fights aren't two people punching it out physically. Because the squares are 50-60 metres, when you get in close we call it a fight. So you might be using weapons at close range. This is where the real death and destruction happens. At longer ranges you won't wipe people out in Western. It's just not really possible. Moving on, there's fights, pursuits, woundeds. Now wounded is very important in Western. When a figure is hurt, it becomes wounded, not just dead. If you don't care for your woundeds, they become dead, then you've got problems. If you care for your wounded, well, they might get better and they'll survive the battle. But you might be surrendering the initiative by wasting your time helping the wounded. And you certainly don't leave wounded to the enemy forces. That's the wounded. There's a reinforcement system, very nice. Game length, where you get about 4 turns each, but the attacker can carry the game on if they're prepared to risk things. There's artillery machine gun, there's a little bit of a one-off there. What have we got here? Oh, exits. Exits are important. If defenders feel bunched in, it affects their victory conditions. So the attacker needs to try and surround and contain them. Victory conditions. There's a set of victory conditions here, so it can be a nice neutral third-party decision rather than people just say, oh, I'm sure I've won or you've won, whatever. There's defender criteria and there's attacker criteria. These two are very different. They're very different. The grey is what you get for getting those criteria successfully. There's a special white section here. You can enhance some of your victory conditions and keep it secret from your opponent. So your main aim might be to knock out his leaders or his overall commander. His main aim might be to get the liability off you, or to hold the buildings, or to surround you. But he won't tell you, it'll be in secret conditions written down. There we go. There's the victory condition results. There's a narrative there to tell you how much you've won by. There's some other optional rules. There's rivers there, big rivers. Harsh weather. That doesn't mean like it's a hot day. That means things like it's driving rain, snow, nighttime, dust storms, stuff like that. Trains. Well, trains can be in it, no problem at all. Fire, when you set fire to buildings and prairie and the like. Placeholders. Now, there's a thing called legends in here. If you note down the last few games you've played, they may contribute towards your legend. Of course, if you're a bit useless and get shot to bits every time, your legend's not very good. If you build a good legend, it can help you in future games. A good legend would be where someone's won some games or turned up for a lot of games or brings their own painted troops, the sort of thing you want to reward for people playing games. There's a section on legends there that can be applied. Real life Western battles. Well, the book's too short to list them all in detail. There's about 40 or 50 battles listed there. About 40 or 50 with the name, the date and a few brief details. These are all proper little battles with between 30 and 200 men aside. Not skirmishes, but proper little battles. There's a campaign system as well. The campaign system will generate about 3 battles and about 3 or 4 skirmishes. It's not intended to last more than a couple of weeks of regular gaming. There's the campaign system with all sorts of detail and bits and pieces in it. There's the campaign system. There's an index at the back, which is jolly useful looking bits and pieces up. And that's Western. It's a nice looking book, shiny cover, very straightforward internals. There's not lots and lots of extra bits of fluff and padding and that. It's all about the game. And you can download the play sheets for free off the internet. There it is. Download the battle sheet free off the internet. That's them done.